Stoner, 7 days a week. Green and sticky, make no lungs feel weak. Yeah, we smoking on that green and sticky. Roll that shit up in a blunt, smoke that green and sticky. Give me everything you got of that green and sticky. Burn it up, never catch a charge. Roll it fat and extra large. Put this blunt up to your face, touch your lips like a sweet cigar. Wax on top, I wanna fly. I like that keep when it's inside. Smoke in my mouth, look in my eyes. Feeling so slumped, looking so high, back so low. Like a surprise, hit up the plug and I advertise. I want you to bring that big loud back. Drop it in my old garage. Need that green, making me scream. Out in public, smelling so mean. I don't cook, I don't clean. I order that takeout like a king. Blow it up, light it up, smoke deep inside of me. Quick exhale for a let it get the best of me. I never ever cough unless the devil was about to be. I roll another one for a let it hit a clown on me. Talk your shit like that trash. Ask for a hit cause I smoke that gas. You really ain't never gonna beg me for a thing. I ain't frontin' you shit, I don't play them games. Now get to breaking down the Dutch for that green and sticky. You on the gram posting pictures of this green and sticky. Pay the price if you wanna smoke this green and sticky. You know the name, get high rapper on the green and sticky. Yeah, you smoking on that green and sticky. Roll that shit up in a blunt, that's that green and sticky. Give me everything you got of that green and sticky. Yeah.
Ô Britannie, ma jolie Bretagne, je te dédie cette petite chanson. T'es bien monté comme une chaîne de montagne, t'es bien roulé comme une galette au jambon. Et si je pourrais t'emmener en Espagne pour une petite vacation au bord de mer dans un océan de champagne, j'essaierai de noyer le poisson. Au Britannie, ma jolie campagne, parfois le soleil est un peu grognon. J'ai pas trouvé plus charmant que la Bretagne, pourtant j'en ai exploré des régions. Et si je pourrais être celui qui t'accompagne, que tu sois à Morlaix ou à Lannion. Et si un jour je me casse en Champagne, tu seras jalouse et t'auras bien raison. Thank you. It's Rodney back in the house today. I mean, damn, this is one hell of a special episode. Consider myself one of the biggest fans of my guest today, but you'll know her from her iconic YouTube channel.
Hey dolls, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am just your average drag queen sharing my opinions on the simple things that make life worth living. And yes, I also review a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race content. Not all of it, because, let's be honest, I have a life. If you're a fan of films, check out my makeup and movie series where I combine two of my favorite things. Can you guess what they are? Yes, makeup, because, well, it helps me look like this, and, that's right, movies, which I'm usually watching while I'm putting on my makeup. And I'm not talking new releases. I review classic films that you might not have seen because, well, you're young and full of the newness of living. Not bitter. I've also been known to wag a chin with special guests, not just from the world of drag, but from the world of YouTube too. People you may not have heard about yet, with fabulous channels that I think you should get to know. Peppered in there are Get Ready With Me's, unboxings, and the odd tutorial or two. So pick a video, or better yet, a playlist, grab yourself a bevy and or a snack, I don't want to tell you how to do it, and enjoy the Fingerdoo review. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss new content. And once you watch something, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on the subject because I answer everyone. What can I say? I'm single and I don't have pets. I've got the time is what I'm saying. So, sit back, enjoy, and until next time, this is me! Mwah! Seriously.
You may not know about it. If you don't know about it, now you fucking do, okay? You may know her from her show, Knock Knock Ghost on Amazon, but without any other further ado, I give y'all Miss Wilma Fingerdoo. How are you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm much better now.
How are you doing today?
Good, Rodney. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to have you on the show. There's a lot of things that you and I have talked about, and there's a lot of things that I would like to continue talking about. We had one hell of a fucking green room episode, so much so that I wish I would have recorded the damn thing.
You're an idiot.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. But welcome to the show regardless. Miss Fingerdoo, yo, the name in and of itself beckons a title and it commands a presence. So you've got me wondering over here, and I haven't asked you yet, but how did you come up with the name Wilma Fingerdoo?
Well, a friend of mine who's a drag queen, Shalina Buffet, which is another fantastic name, she had been in the States at a show, and she had come back, and this was before I was doing drag, but I was making clothing for drag queens because my background's in wardrobe. And
okay.
She said, I heard the best name, and she said Wilma Fingerdoo, and I laughed so hard I had to sit down. And at that time, I was hosting a radio show on Proud FM here in Canada, in Toronto. And whenever I would put on a song like Karen White's Superwoman or anything by Mariah Carey, I would introduce it by saying, if I were a drag queen, my name would be Wilma Fingerdoo, and I would do this song, and then I would hit it. And because I wasn't really doing drag then, but the name just made me laugh so hard. And so then I was also doing some stuff without TV. I'm multifaceted. I'm a whore for media, really, is what I'm trying to tell you, Rocky. But I was also doing some on-camera work with Out TV, and a drag queen in New York named Hedda Lettuce had done a video review of the announced cast for season 4 of RuPaul's Drag Race, and it was so funny. She made fun of each and every one of them, and it was the funniest thing. And I said to the people at Out TV, have you seen this? You need to get a drag queen to do this for you guys, for your station. And they were like, well, why don't you do it? The problem I think a lot of people don't realize is people that produce, like have channels or like a station, they love content, but they're not interested in making it. Like, so they would rather you go out of your way to do it so that they could just air it than to go to the trouble of finding somebody who's better suited to do it. for themselves. So I kind of was like, okay, and I did. And as I was doing that, people would say, oh, how did you come, why the name Wilma Fingerdoo? And I would say to them, well, it's because you can't say Wilma Assbleed on TV. And then and most people hadn't heard the pun in Wilma Fingerdoo. Do you know what I mean? I think that they kind of associated it more with Wilma Flintstone. But yeah,
both are equally as treacherous.
Yeah. Well, but the thing with the name Wilma Fingerdoo, it's like the name Sharon Needles. She was a drag queen on season 4 of Drag Race. There's almost a Sharon Needles or a Wilma Fingerdoo in every town. Like, it's just one of those easily come across names. Now, when I Google Wilma Fingerdoo, I'm the only one that shows up, and I'm okay with that. But there is a queen in Britain called Wilma Ballsdrop, and she's a hoot. But yeah, there's a lot of Wilmas and Ivanas. They're easy first names because you can almost add whatever you want on the end of it.
Dude, I fucking love that. I love that so much. Some of the stage names, shout out Pandora Lestrange. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, out of Arizona. Love the names. Love all of them. I worked with a few drag queens, in a few kitchens. I don't remember their stage names, and I apologize, guys. I know you're watching me, but, I remember being fascinated, if I may. It's not about me, but if I may, a little bit of, perspective here. I grew up feeling safe in all of the environments, man. You know what I'm saying? Never once did I feel like, oh, this is, vibes, right? Like, if you feel weird about something, like, you have the right to fuck off for all intensive purposes, right? Yeah. You're like, I don't want to be here. It's like we talked about earlier with drinking alcohol. You know what I'm saying? If you're not feeling it, you're just not feeling it, right? And you'll take off. That's acceptable. That's fine. There's a conversation that'll happen afterwards, or a true friend should know X, Y, and absolutely. But never once did I fear for my life or anything. Like, I didn't feel like, what's the term they're using? Not shepherding. It's like conditioning or whatever the fuck it. Grooming is the word that's flying.
Oh yes, right.
Yeah, I never felt groomed.
No, yeah, it's funny. I mean? There's that typical, it's not a drag queen thing, it's a gay man thing where all straight men think that gay men want to sleep with them. And, that's not true. We just want to sleep with the hot ones. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you ugly. I don't care what your preferences are. But I always find that it's funny. The attractive straight men never seem to have a problem with it. It's all the ugly ones that no one's touching anyway. It's like you don't have enough on your credit card, honey. Like, your phone sex is a challenge for you. You know what I mean? Like, those are the ones that are always going, I don't want anyone touching my ass. It's like, well, then don't worry about it.
I felt that way for the longest time. I really did, but I'm glad that, you said it. This is the truth. Now I know that it's out there and that I'm not fucking insane for thinking that. And I'm just like, there's so many other things that, given the chance where the tables were turned, that people in the drag and, the gay community, LGBTQ+, I don't remember the entire thing. I do apologize. But,
either. I just call it LGBTQ expialidocious. That's what I say.
There we go. And that's fine. I'm not trying to, Right, I'm not trying to misappropriate or leave anybody out. I just, I don't know till I know, right? And so,
even
my point is,
in the spectrum, I don't know what it's called. They keep changing it. They add, they subtract. There's numbers now. It's ridiculous.
Y'all let me know, and I'll edit that shit. Exactly. Well, that's the thing. The biggest thing that I've learned, and correct me if I may, it's about respect. That's just the truth, So, okay, let's say that you did meet somebody that didn't like drag shows, and they're like, you know what, let's have a conversation. And they sat down, they're like, this is why I don't like. You would hear them out, right? That's respect. Okay, let's hear this. I'll hear any logical argument.
Rodney, it's not a straight person thing. A lot of gay men don't like drag shows either.
Now that's fascinating to me. Sorry.
Reportedly, the most single in the gay community, because this is why I think there's that straight man fascination. Before recent times where societies allowed for non-binary and transgender conversations, and for people to self-identify and use pronouns as they want, there was a real prejudice within the gay community. Like if you were straight acting, like they on those dating apps and stuff, it would be no fats, no femmes, no Asians, straight acting. Like these were all things that we were getting from the straight community too.
So like subcategories.
Yeah, and here it's happening within our own community, but it's understandable on one level because we're all raised, like the irony of the gay community is we're raised by straight people.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's some inherent values that some people are just attached to by no fault of their own, except who they were born to, or the community they were raised in. And there's a lot of self-hate in the gay community too. Gay men have terrible eating disorders because no fats, and the Asian community is so underrepresented because no Asians and no femmes. Like if you were particularly effeminate man, you were, you might as well have be a walking cancer cell. Do you know what I mean? Like there's nobody's going to be interested in you, and it's so changed now. Like one of my favorite types of drag queens is like a muscle Mary, and to me that's somebody who's gone to the gym and has the shoulders and the arms, and they look like Arnold Schwarzenegger's stand-in, and then they're all like, "Hey girl," and it's like it's such a dichotomy, and it hits your brain no matter who you are, like a wet slap. But I like that wet slap. I like, you see a drag queen in a little spaghetti strap dress with Arnold Schwarzenegger's shoulders, and I'm in heaven. I think that's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And they're usually, because they're really being their truest, authentic self, regardless of how they look, they're usually the ones having the most fun.
I'd agree. Yeah. Growing up, cooking, and not to, kind of make it about cooking, but that's what I knew growing up, right?
Fine, let's talk about food.
Right. Go figure. It's in the intro, right? So like, cooking, we don't care who the fuck you are. If you're worth your salt, you're worth your salt. We don't care. Do you know your job? You know your job. That's the end of it. And what we do care about is letting people artistically express who the fuck they are, whether that's, music, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a show. Who knows, man? I don't know your medium. There's no way for me as a chef to tell you what you can and can't do. However, if you're cooking my dish, that's a different story. But that's, that's a whole different, that's the work thing, right? You only understand
that's really what it all boils down to, doesn't it, Rodney? If I'm putting it in my body, I'm going to have an opinion.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the thing. Oh, yeah. But at the same time, like if you're a chef trying to teach a sous chef or your line cooks or your kitchen how you did that, they're going to, at least they're going to understand to at least watch it once and do it till you can't fuck it up.
Yeah.
That's the rudimentary, rigmarole of a young cook. And then once you get to the point where you can't fuck it up, chef is going to switch it. So it keeps you on your toes type of thing. And you learn all these recipes just like, machine gun fire over the years. It doesn't matter who's standing alongside you, unless they got your back. That's the truth. You're in the trenches together. But I'll tell you this, some of the most fucking fun nights I've ever had, I was working with somebody, his name, and it's funny you should mention this, is why I was laughing earlier. His name was, in fact, George, okay? So that's why I was, right. So I was like, if only you knew, and I was waiting for this story, so I apologize, but I was like, if only George knew. So George was a drag queen. I just don't remember what his name. Well, I don't remember. Yeah, because I fucking blacked out. So he's like, "Hey, man."
Somebody out of drag and know them as a name, and then they're in drag, and like what somebody I used to sew for, I had only ever seen out of drag, even though I made them dresses, even though we would do fittings, they weren't in drag. And then the first time I saw them in drag, I called them by their boy name, only because it's the only one I really knew. I hadn't really identified with them as that, but it got to a point where I would call them the drag name in drag and the boy name out, where in the gay community or the drag community, if that's your drag name, that's what they call you all the time, whether you're in drag or not. And, the funny thing was, often drag queens, oh, she, but drag kings are still a new territory for a lot of people because, men dressing as women have been a little more in the forefront, like in the arts and that, from panto theater in Britain and that. So to see a woman dressed as a man, a lot of people would still refer to them as she. And I remember I was doing a show and the host was a drag king. And I kept saying he and him. And I mean, his drag name was Dirk. So that's the least feminine name I've ever heard. So of course I was calling him he and that. And at the end of the night, he came up and thanked me and said, it's rare that people refer to me like that. And I just couldn't understand it. It's like, well, if I expect you to refer to me as a female while I'm dolled up, how can you expect me to treat you any other way yourself? You know what I mean? Like it's very interesting. I think it takes people a while to learn new things, and once they do, then it's fine. But it's hard.
As a straight white male, one of the hard, and maybe people don't know this, and I'm going to share my perspective because maybe somebody can learn from it.
Male? Oh, I think it's obvious.
Oh, yeah, I know. But no, growing up, seeing the differences and seeing the nuances, I call them nuances because they are, of how people want to be perceived. Yeah. I tell people this, and I say this, and it's kind of implied, really. I don't know your pronouns unless you tell me. So that's fair. Okay. At the same time, I'm going to call you what I see. All right. Yeah. So if I'm looking at a drag queen, I'm going to say she. If I'm looking at a drag king, I'm going to say he. If I'm looking at George standing next to me, for all intents and purposes, I'm going to say he. And that's, he understood that. And anybody who knows, me personally, or has gotten it, they know that. They know that's it. He's not looking into anything. He's not digging. He's not fishing. You are who you are. I say that's pretty fair ground. What would you say?
I totally agree. Like, not every drag queen who's out of drag wants people to know they're a drag queen for whatever their reasoning. I think if you're dressed a certain way, then that's how you identify. But one of the things that's interesting for me, because I'm 57 this year, trans language, like that whole, it's still new to me, and I'm in that community. And I remember when cisgendered came up, and it was hard for me to kind of quantify that because it was like, I don't get. I got it eventually, and then I was having a conversation with some straight people who aren't connected to the LGBTQ community, and somebody just brought it up. It's like, I don't get this cisgendered thing. What is that all about? And I said to them, well, if you're trans, you were born in a body that you don't identify with. It's like I said to this one woman, if you woke up tomorrow in a man's body and you had a penis and you had to shave and you were bald, like, it would be a shock to you, and you would be embarrassed to go out because that's not how you're comfortable, and all of that. And so a lot of people misgender the trans community by identifying them as not a real woman. And it's like, well, they are mentally, like they're the part of their body that makes them who they are sees themselves that way. But you couldn't refer to a born female woman who's representing female as a real woman in front of a trans person because, well, they are as well. And this is where the cisgender had to come up. It's like, well, this cisgender, like we had a drag queen on RuPaul's Drag Race UK who's a female, Victoria Scone, and she's a lesbian, so she is gay. She's not an ally, but she's also a cisgendered woman doing drag. She referred to herself as AFAB, assigned female at birth.
Okay.
And so it's having her on Drag Race was interesting to see people kind of go, I don't get it. Why? What are you doing? Because a lot of people see drag as being the transformation. So they see that women can only do male drag because it's a transformation. But most people, women, don't go walking down the street with their eyebrows up on their forehead and their lips overdrawn by an inch. Like nobody goes around like that. I remember listening to Patti LaBelle in an interview years and years and years ago saying that she got into drag true because she doesn't go around like that, you know.
Okay.
But there's always something hard to learn for everybody, and all you can do is listen to it. I remember because I do stand-up comedy as well. I was talking to a transgendered male comic who would constantly have these aggressive outbursts when he was misgendered. And I got it, but I said to him, you know, it's one thing for you to be upset with somebody who knows you, who still refers to you with the wrong pronoun. That's them insulting you. But when you're talking to somebody from a small town outside of the metropolitan area, you might be the only trans person they will ever meet. And this is the moment they're going to take back with them, is you being aggressive and angry. What do you think their opinion of the trans community is going to be then? I mean, you're missing a learning opportunity here where you can very calmly say, oh, I don't identify as that. And it's not your job to get them to understand it, and it's not their job to understand it immediately, but all you can do is express the moment. And I have to say, it took me a long time to get my head around that, and not because I'm not sensitive to it. It was hard to unlearn certain processes. I think the kids that are being raised now have a much better idea of what's going on because they weren't taught other things, or if they were taught those other thought processes, they had something to balance it out, even if they aren't allowed to get it in schools and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's still socially that's out there. And I think also people need to be a lot kinder to themselves if they don't get something right. Like, I remember Cher, when Chaz came out as transgender, she wasn't good with it, Cher. She kept calling Chaz her and she, and using her birth name Chastity, and here's Cher, the gay icon of all gay icons, not handling her cisgendered female child, first coming out as gay and then coming out as transgender, and yet we still adore Cher. So the best thing about that whole thing for me was that Cher showed us you can have a bad reaction to something and still be okay, because you're only reacting. You can only react to things the way you react. And I mean, Cher gets it now. It's a learning curve. She sees where she was wrong and doesn't repeat the behavior. But I think a lot of parents should take some comfort in knowing, well, if Cher had a bad reaction to it, I shouldn't feel badly about mine. I think the only thing you can feel badly about is perpetuating hate.
So I got into a discussion with, I have, a few transgendered friends, and this specific transgendered individual was going from male at birth to female. Okay. And so, friends with her, and, we talked about everything. I was wildly curious. I really was. I was like, how does that work? Like, put me in the mindset so that I can see your perspective. And, I learned a lot. And I looked at it this way. When people, such as she does, and then many other people out there in the world, who's to say that your perspective is wrong, first and foremost? Is that a misconception that you were groomed with somewhere, or something about your own mental health? A. And B, what have I done to make you think that? You know what I'm saying? Let's fix that. Let's abate that symptom. And then from that, we'll earn some trust. But I do have a question, and then I'll usually ask them with this. Okay. Is it okay of you to try and disrespect me to prove the validity of your point? You know what I'm saying? And so when you hit them with that logic, they're like, huh? Well, that's my point. Don't try and put me down to prove your narrative or to push your truth or whatever have you, because truth be told, like, if you're allowed to do that, then I'm allowed to change my mind at new information. And if that's the case, I can move away from this if I choose to. A lot of people are surprised by, meeting a person of that, I wouldn't say logic, but like perspective. And I think that, passing this on to generations, because, I'm 36 years old, so I've definitely got to pass on the baton and the education. I feel that It is very true. It's much like, okay, if you're raising a kid and you keep smacking the kid's going to know, if I do this, I'm going to get hit. That's all the kid knows. But if you stop and you explain the behavior and why maybe not to do it, that's where you take the time and you change a ripple in time, in that kid's behavior. They won't go around smacking people and shit. It's not okay to do. So it is a learned behavior. You're absolutely right. I don't want to say the word grooming, but that shit's happening. That shit absolutely.
That's the irony of it, isn't it? You get all of this pushback from a certain group in America, for instance, right now, where they're saying that drag queens are grooming children, but it's like, well, you're grooming children. You put them in princess dresses if they're girls, and give them trucks as toys if they're boys, and you cut their hair a certain way. You don't ask them what they want, and how is that? In fact, it's not just not different than what they're assuming the gay community.
It's the exact same thing.
But A, the gay community is not doing any of it, and B, they're doing it in an aggressive way. They're not. There's no choice, and I feel any child that questions anything about themselves, first of all, it doesn't mean that that child's going to be gay or trans or whatever.
That's their choice.
They're just questioning it. They just have questions. And, I always knew I was gay. I always knew I was gay. But I also knew for no reason, because no one said anything to me, not to talk about it. Children are incredibly astute. And they can tell. They may love their parents, but they also can tell, my parent's not going to get this. There's a reason kids have to come out of the closet, because they can tell somehow that by being who they are, they're not going to be well received. If that's the case. For those kids that are well received, you hear of the kids that have sex change operations after they're finished puberty or whatever, at 16, 17. Not that they've had sex change operations at that young, but they're allowed to identify as the sex they feel like. I remember watching this newsreel about a young girl who was born male. And I don't think she was 9 yet, but she was in full dress and as with her hair and everything. And her mom was very proud of her daughter and everything. But they also knew well enough that, they moved schools so that the daughter could start as a daughter and not have anybody looking at her going, "What happened to you?" You know what I mean? Because people are still, it's a hard one. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm not saying that the hate or the misunderstanding's acceptable, but it's understandable. And I think sometimes that's the problem. It's hard to expect people to just get something because you do. I remember when the TV show Glee, at one point everyone on the show was gay. And I remember at the time going, oh, well, this isn't good, because not everyone watching this show thinks that way. You know what I mean? Right. And we've had a long time before gay marriage was accepted. And between gay marriage being accepted, passed into legislation in some places, to now everyone being openly gay, and I'm allowed to have a boyfriend and take him to the prom, or a girlfriend and take him to the prom.
Do not go to Uganda.
Well, don't go to a lot of places. Never mind.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, yeah.
This is why Rainbow Railroad exists. They help. That's a charity that funds people to get these people, these LGBTQ plus sexpialidocious brothers and sisters, out of these hateful environments. It's terrible. I feel like people accept murderers before they'll accept a gay or trans person, and the gay and trans person hasn't done anything. They're just being who they are. Whereas the murderer, look at how many people follow Charlie Manson.
So,
you know what I mean?
If I may,
yes.
If I may, I'm going to say something, and it could be taken as outlandish, and maybe it is. You're absolutely correct about the murderer. You're absolutely correct about all of that. But I would argue one point, and it depends on how much money is behind this individual.
Always. Money talks. Always.
Exactly. Yeah. Because here's the thing. The more money you have, with all due respect, the more you can get away with. Want to know how I can prove this? Not my actions. It's the actions of all these other individuals. For example, let's just throw a dartboard at Michigan and see what happens. Let's talk Flint water for a while. All of those officials that allowed that to happen and did it on fucking purpose got let go. Like nothing happened.
Yeah.
People fucking died. We're still having issues with that. And that's my point. So if you Google Flint water, you can watch this entire travesty. And you know what? The people that did that, nothing. You want to know why? Because they fucking had money. If they didn't have any money, they'd have been so far in the prison system, it's not even funny. Yeah. So again, I would argue it depends on how much money
Flint, Michigan had to deal with. It would be one thing, but Flint, Michigan has been getting the short end of a very long stick for decades on a number of levels. It's ridiculous.
The entire state has, with all due respect, and it's. I'll be honest. One of the good things that I have seen out of Michigan in the last, let's say, half a decade, is the fact all the marijuana laws that are changing, for the better. Let's be honest.
With this whole thing against drag queens, Ben de la Creme was on the Daily Show, and she's a fabulous RuPaul's Drag Race queen as well, who I've actually interviewed a few times myself, and she was pointing out that the language of these laws isn't really about drag, it's about trans people. Because 9 times out of 10, excuse me, 9 times out of 10, you have a drag show in a bar, you can't see it from the street, but there are some bars that have a window. Like we had one in the village here, and it was called the Window Show. And most of the people in this neighborhood are gay men, and no one's offended walking by seeing the drag show. What's ironic about that in the village in Toronto, we also have a public school in the middle of it, where grades kindergarten to 6 children are. And I think the more threatening thing to those children aren't the drag queens and their shows. They still do, I don't know if they do this in Michigan still, but you used to paper a show. You'd put posters up and let everyone know what was happening. And in a lot of those cases, there were naked or near naked men on the poster because it was a gay event. And I thought that was more offensive because of kids in the neighborhood. Do you know what I mean? Like to me, the drag queen's not going to be a problem because 9 times out of 10, the kids aren't going to even see them. It's late at night. They're inside a bar. It's not for kids. No one ever said, "Oh, this show is for children." But then they started reading to them.
Reading to kids, right?
And oh, how horrible! You read a book to children? Oh, lock them up.
How literate of you.
Yeah, I mean, parents won't even read to their own kids. It's like, they should be happy someone is. But then that offended somebody. Good. And then the law has been very ambiguous in the sense that it's somebody dressed in the opposite gender of their birth. So they're discrediting trans men and women
and
who are men or women. Like if they're presenting male or female, that's who they are. They're not doing it to entertain anybody, let alone children. But because of the wording of these laws, if a trans person is on their way to the store to get groceries and children are around, they could, in theory, be locked up. They're breaking the law. Now, I remember when when drag queens were reading to children, my first thing was, why would you do that? Like, I wouldn't do that. I'm
right,
not
but that's how you feel about it. You know what I'm saying?
That's my thing.
Right.
At the same time, I thought I could totally see children loving that, especially because my first initial thought of a drag queen is usually being very inappropriate, scantily dressed, and having a trash mouth. But then that's every red carpet for the Oscars as well. Some of these women have their necklines down to their navels, and how is that allowed? First of all, they're being interviewed with a mic like there's nothing going on, like they can't see their heart beating through their exposed chest. But at the same time, I'm also thinking, your parents are watching you, and you've got your tits out. What's going on? Like that's okay because they're women. I think they need to get to the root of the problem, and the root of the problem isn't that men are dressed as women reading to children. It's that somebody's upset about it.
That's exactly my point, and you're gonna love how I look at it. I oversimplified the shit, but I look at it this way: let's say you got a drag show, and then let's call it a burlesque, because some of them are okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you got a drag show burlesque that wants to happen every whatever. They want to set up shop and open in town. I think that's fucking great, and here's why. Because this town that we're talking about already has 3 or 4 fucking stripper joints, which is fine. Hear me out. Because here's the thing. I've known strippers that have went to drag shows. They love each other. Like, that's the truth. I'm not saying I'm everyone, because it's all performing. It's all entertaining. Now, the best part is that's not the ones in the question here. The ones in question here, the real question is, why are these people afraid to go into either?
Yeah.
You see my point? So it's like the reason that they'll go into both. I'll do it, but it's not what you're going to say when you go back, because when you go back, your wife, your mistress, whoever in your life that's insecure enough or whatever has a tight little fix in your fucking nuts. Whoever you got to hide this from, the taxpayers, we don't give a shit. We would rather our politicians go to a fucking drag show. Are you kidding me? I'd rather go to get your lap dance. That's fine, but make sure you fucking you be respectful about it. But the problem is, why are you gonna lie about it as soon as you leave? That's the problem. We're all human, but that's my perspective.
Madonna's in the middle of starting a world tour, like her 50 years in.
I heard about this, yes.
And it's a huge. It's like 50 decades of fabulous hits and everything. And her opening act is Bob the Drag Queen, who won season 8 or 9. I don't know. She's a drag race winner. Okay. And she has a podcast. She has a makeup line. She has songs out. She has a fantastic YouTube channel. And Madonna's having her open for her show. And she's actually booked some shows in the southern states, not Tennessee, but she'll be in Kentucky. And proceeds, a certain percentage of the show's proceeds are going to support legal funds for for gay and drag members of the community.
Awareness, if you will. Yeah.
Well, fighting any kind of legislation that they're up against. If they've been arrested or I don't know. It's so weird.
There's struggles.
I remember when gay marriage was on the books, and I said, they're never going to allow gay marriage. And as a gay person, I said that. And then all of a sudden, gay marriage was passed. It was like, okay. And then stuff started getting better and better and more open. But there was a point there where I said, they're moving very quickly. Like, we took a long time to get to marriage. Mm-hmm. And now we're in like a fraction of the time to non-binary and trying to get people to understand that. And we forget, especially when we live in metropolitan areas or on the coasts, it seems to be, that there's this great expanse in the middle of our countries. Mm-hmm. Where these people aren't exposed and aren't educated and aren't interested. And they don't have to come up with that stuff. And anybody that makes them kind of have to deal with it is either picked on, bullied, or run out of town. You know what I mean? And so I remember at a point where I think it was with Frozen, it was this whole thing, well, Elsa's clearly a lesbian. I'm like, can't she just be a cartoon character? Like, that was me.
Yeah.
Why do we have to label everything? I get why people want to, but it's not always appropriate. And I remember even then thinking, somebody's going to push somebody too far and there's going to be a backlash. And now here we are. And I'm not saying, look, I was right. I'm sad that I'm right. But at the same time, what else do these people have to complain about? Like, they've complained about everything. Now this is kind of like their last hurrah.
It's like you're running out of shit at this point. Like, it's
and then you have Trump who's saying, I didn't incite a riot on January 6th, and now he's possibly going to be indicted, and he's calling people to arms again, but he's not doing it. It's like, how is that being accepted in a guy in a dress lip-syncing to Britney Spears? Britney Spears lip-syncs to Britney Spears. Why isn't she arrested? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Backtracking. No, the backtracking, sometimes she does. If Britney can't perform and she backtracks her vocals, you can't get mad if she lip syncs her own song, technically. Let's be honest. We're performers here. We get it. But those motherfuckers
so she's allowed. But anybody who's tucked away And let's just say, isn't that polite of them to tuck some stuff away so you don't have to look at it? Personally, I love that bearded queens are now a thing. I think that there's nothing more intriguing to me than a drag queen with a full beard or a mustache or whatever.
Do you want to know the only problem I have with it? Like, I literally have one problem with it, and you're going to be like, I understand that. And it's not what you think, if I may. Not to make it about me, but you might find this, you're like, oh, that's interesting. When they do the glitter in the beard, I hate that, and here's why. It just, to me, having a beard makes my beard itch. That's it. That's literally it. It looks fucking great in some cases. I've seen some really intricate, like, things and, like, ornaments and beadings, and, dude, it's fucking sweet.
Yeah.
Well,
now drag queens are wearing instead of just a wig, they also wear fake facial hair. It's interesting how it's evolving. And now we allow we had a straight cisgendered male do a season of Drag Race 2 seasons ago or last season. But either way, it's opening like a lot of people go, why would you want to dress as a woman if you're not gay? Well, lots of gay men don't want to dress as women. I said this earlier. Lots of gay men won't date a drag queen because they don't want that feminine element in their life. And it's like, well, most drag queens don't dress as women when they're not being paid. Mm-hmm. There are transgendered people who drag is like the gateway to their self-expression and acceptance. But they're not
a sense of normalcy, if you will. Right.
Yeah. Lots of queens. There are a lot of queens. We've had quite a few transgendered women on Drag Race and the franchises in the last few years. But we've also had cisgendered women. And it's because drag, you can't put drag out there as a popular cultural thing and make it look as fun as they make it look and not expect other people to want to try it. To say to a woman, you can't do drag because you're not a man, is like saying to a black person, you can't drink out of that fountain because you're not white. I'll tell you, it took me a while to get that as well, because for me, the idea of drag is to dress as the opposite sex. Drag is about the illusion. Like, I'm not even a huge fan of drag queens that get facial surgery to feminize their features more. I like to see them feminize those features with makeup. That's the art for me. I don't begrudge anyone who does it. I don't say they can't, but it took me a while to accept women, because I thought, well, I don't know if we should call them drag queens because they're not necessarily in drag. And then I realized, well, no, they absolutely are in drag. But I mean, I'm not happy at the fact that it was hard for me to get it, but I did get it, and the bottom line is, what do I care? Do what you want. If I don't want to see a woman dressed like a drag queen at a club, then I don't have to go. I certainly don't have to call my local representative and have a law passed. You know what I mean? Like, calm down.
Think about how miserable that person's fucking life has to be.
No kidding. It's hard enough. It's hard enough just getting up in the morning and walking out the door, no matter what you're wearing. Mm-hmm. Excuse me.
Oh, you're all right. If you walk out the door, and that's my point. Like, who the fuck are you to like listen? How is that not grooming? That's my point. By you telling me that,
it's totally grooming.
It just never made sense to me.
Is who touched you as a child? I want to know what happened to
you.
Who hurt you?
Who hurt you?
Yeah, show us on the doll, because there's something happened that you'd have to be this full of hate.
That's why I said that's why I said a strip club and a drag, I don't want to call it a boutique, burlesque, or, there could be different speakeasies. I don't know. There's different businesses that do different things. This is the truth.
Of inequity, you don't know.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. There is a pretty prolific drag, scene, like we were saying earlier, here in mid-Michigan. I've actually been to quite a few different shows over the years, and it's never really the same people, it's different people each time. It's like I don't want to say circus, but like it is in a sense. Some people travel to do this.
Yeah.
Like but it's all entertainers at the same time, very, very parallel to cooking in kitchens, I mean,
here's the other thing that I want to say. a lot of drag queens too aren't often performing to a captive audience. I remember the first time I saw drag in a bar, I was really, as an actor, as a performer myself, I was really kind of insulted that the majority of the room were all just trying to pick each other up. They weren't paying any attention to what was going on. And what was sad about it was the queen that was on stage, I think she was the host, was so funny. Like, I think I was the only one who was watching her and laughing at all her jokes. And she loved it. Like, she started performing for me. And then every queen that went up, because I was literally the only one sitting in. And again, I wasn't doing drag at the time, but I thought, how could you just turn your eye away from somebody performing? Like, if you don't want to watch someone perform, why are you in this bar? They have a stage and lights set up for it. It's not like it just happened. I used to do stand-up comedy in bars where it was like a one-off event, and they just clear out a corner of the bar, or God help us, close the pool table down so people weren't standing right in front of you playing pool while you were trying to perform. And people hated that, or they turn off the sporting events on the TV so that the show could go on, and everyone hated you. It's like, oh, I don't want to perform in a place that doesn't want me.
Right.
But it's amazing to me, like in the community itself, drag has taken a long time to find its audience as well, because it was just this little bar thing. Like, nobody really looked at it as real performing. It was like, oh, somebody in a dress trying to make enough money to drink for the night or what have you. And thanks to RuPaul's Drag Race, like, not only has drag kind of elevated to a legitimate performing category, but there's also legitimate platforms to perform on. Jinx Monsoon is on Broadway in Chicago. I think that ends this weekend. She and Ben de la Creme tour the world with their Christmas show. Bob the Drag Queen has two. He had I think it was a Prime or Out TV. He had a drag queen stand-up special. It's amazing now the opportunities that are out there for these performers. A lot of drag queens never thought performing beyond the bar, and now they're doing theater shows. And
traveling
they're
and
doing
shit, yeah.
their content more. They're not just doing like lip syncing to a song. They're actually putting a concept show together, and it's fascinating. There's Hilary Yaz is a fabulous queen here in Toronto who was on Camp Wanakiki, which is another drag contest show. And she does, she's very into the improv community here in Toronto. And the improv festival, there's an improv festival like the Fringe Festival. This is theater that's improvised. And there's a lot of drag queens now that do that because there was really no other place for them to perform before. It was, if you weren't in a gay bar, then you were at home. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, because of all this attention, it's caused a whole bunch of other people who wouldn't have cared at the best of times anyway, now going, what's happening over there? I wasn't looking in that direction, but something glittery caught my eye, and now I have an opinion. It's like, ugh. Calm down. It's not for you. It's not for you.
The ADD of the world, if you will, is a bad thing sometimes. But I think,
hey, squirrel.
Right?
Oh, drag squirrel.
Right. I think that RuPaul's helps build a more understanding and audience and I think that the importance of RuPaul's Drag Race is that it creates conversations behind the closed doors of a home, right? And so you have the conversations fucking there. Kids don't belong in bars, let's be honest. That in and of itself is grooming. You know, I can say that being basically
That's a parenting
raised
issue.
someone.
That's
Exactly.
not a drag queen issue. Yeah.
100%, you know, so it would only make sense that you correct it with reading to kids because, oh, God forbid they be fucking literate. But hang on a second. If you're talking about that's grooming, here's my question. What is your take, being, you know, a drag queen? What is your take on these beauty pageants with kids?
I've never understood that. I've never ever understood it. It looked like it was just a pedophile's shopping center. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I agree.
It's just gross. Like,
it was
I
weird,
remember
man.
when
Like that's
John
weird.
Bonet thing- yeah, when the John Bonet thing happened, I really wasn't aware that there was that large a beauty pageant community of that level. Like, I always thought like Little Miss Sunshine, you know, somebody, little kid in a Sunday school dress with a barrette in her hair. It's like, oh, isn't she cute? Like that's fine. I get that. But these kids were like literally in padded bras, and they're 8. Like no 6-year-old should have to have that much lip gloss on, unless she's sitting in front of her mother's makeup mirror having a playtime. You know what I mean? Like, I never understood that. But then I also don't understand how these women can go to these award shows with their tits out. You know, it's or in a nude dress where everything's strategically covered, and maybe they're wearing a full opaque bodysuit underneath and nothing's exposed at all. But it's like, you still look naked, and there's some kids at home thinking that that's how you have to go out. To dress like an adult, you have to have your tits out. It's like, no, I don't think you do. Meryl Streep's never dressed like that. She has a fine career. But yeah, if you've ever been to a drag show and enjoyed yourself, then you should be letting your representatives know that you don't agree with this legislation. I mean, if it were about drag queens being filthy trash mouths and half naked and maybe not even clothed in front of children, yeah, I get that. That I would be against that too. But that's not what's going on. And in a lot of these cases, these laws are being passed or even just being brought up without anybody having any idea what anyone's talking about. They've never been to any of it. They just assume this. Or in most cases, as we were talking about earlier, it's not even about the issue. Mm-hmm. The issue is to distract everyone from the other things that are going on. And, you know, people sit there and get their panties in a wad over drag queens being illegally allowed to perform, and then all of a sudden there's an immigration law that got passed no one saw it. You know, it's like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. The politics of politics are ridiculous.
I don't like the fact that the politics and bureaucracy is so small-minded individuals have to resign to be the fact. I really don't. You know, I don't like the fact. Okay, let's take it back to Tennessee and talk about them real quick again. Listen, the fact that weed is still illegal in any fucking state anywhere in the world blows my fucking mind, because they treat it the same. They treat everything they don't know anything about or don't like the same, and here's what I mean. So drag is being looked at the same fucking way as weed is in the state of Tennessee. Both are basically illegal because the people that are voting on these things aren't the professionals. They don't know anything about these things. They've never been to a drag show. They've never smoked a joint. They have smoked a joint, had a fucking panic attack, or something. Something happened in their pedantic little fucking medial lives.
Or they thought it was weed, it was something else.
Right. Yeah. Who fucking knows? Or like they don't like drag shows anymore because their wife, you know, came out as gay and he can't get it. So that it doesn't, you know, what do you do? That's not on us. Why should we suffer because your life sucks? Well, that's not the point. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to be rude, but at the same time, like, fuck you, right? I don't think that they understand, the medicinal side of, you know, fuck it, both. It is medicinal to go have a good fucking time, man. Okay, let me get this straight. So let's look at the people that I have seen in the state of Tennessee that would be opposed to a drag show or that would never go to. I've seen people with some fucking terrible rat tails. I'm talking rat tail haircuts. Terrible fucking mullets with tucked in cowboy shirts, okay, cowboy hats, all right, proud of all of this, cowboy boots, shikers they call it, and they'll grab their wife with the fakest fucking rock on their goddamn hand I've ever seen, big as all fucking get out, gaudy as fuck, and she's got one black eye. When questioned, you then ask them, they're like, oh, I didn't listen once. Regardless, that's not a fucking good image to be projecting in public. You guys think that's fucking hilarious. Now, kids see this shit and think it's okay, but, you know, fuck me for, you know, wanting to, I don't know, go to a drag show where that shit damn gangster wouldn't fucking happen. My point. Okay? You see this being polluted and shit enough to the point where, like, you go out, you put on your finest Jordashes, and you go out and get drunk and hammered in a bar or at a casino. Okay? And you have a good night out as a date night, if you will, as a southern fucking, you know, good Christian family. Nowhere in the line of that does it say that you have to shit on other people. Nowhere in the line of that, of you having a good does it say that you have to go out of your way to make sure that Wilma Fingerdoo doesn't perform in the fucking city? That's kind of fucked to me, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's really fucked, okay? Because if the fucking tables were turned, yo, go spend your paycheck at the fucking casino and blame everything else. Go be an alcoholic. Your wife should leave you.
Yeah.
You know, and so that we were ready for that conversation, and I think that that's reflective in those type of politics and albeit religious grooming in the South. The biggest issue right now with the LGBTQ plus and fucking weed, which is why we're kind of allies on that, all right, is the fucking Bible Belt. That's it. And a lot of people are like, well, you're in Michigan. Why do you care? Well, dude, I live half my fucking life in Tennessee. I seen this shit. And that's why I'm able to speak on it, because I can make a phone call. Ain't nothing changed down there except for some buildings are erected and some are torn down, you know? But that's the point. Like, things change, but the people don't. And that is my point. And that's not okay. It's just like there's this whole wide world out there. And that's why I wanted to, you know, kind of say fuck the questions this week, man. You know, I was kind of thinking about it, and I know we talked about it in the green room, but I was like, it's more important to have this discussion than it is anything chiefing down weed. I mean, you know, obviously you smoke. If you wouldn't mind, like, I have a few questions about it, but I would like to save the best for last and get to the lie to me question.
Oh, sure. Before we get to that, can I just say the one thing that really struck a nerve with me was how fast this anti-gay legislation got passed, and yet there's still can't settle on gun regulation. You know what I mean? We just had another shooting this last week, and you know, and drag queens are the problem. It really lets you know what the priorities are, and they're very, very twisted.
You're absolutely right. And to circle back on that, you're absolutely right. I don't like the fact that, I don't like the fact that right now that entire situation is so pinpointed on a certain specific group of individuals. You understand what I'm saying? And it's interesting because every time that a fucking tragedy like this there's more school shootings and more shootings in America than there are days of the year already. Okay?
People aren't even bothered by it as much as they used to, unless it's in their neighborhood and their children. People hear that there's a shooting, and they're like, oh, that's a shame. It's like...
Well, that's how it fucking starts. That's the sad part. That's how an entire someone said, oh, wouldn't you want a revolution as an anarchist? No, like, it's anti that. That's the point. Like, me being an anarchist, I don't have to, politicize anything. It's all fucked. It's all the same bird. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm just a feather at this point. You know, I look at it this way, like, if I had it my way and then decree by everything, I wouldn't have two sides. We need more than just two sides, because both of those two sides are wrong. So why would I want to flip and take a chance with that coin? I'm not gonna, and so it's like, until we start putting our foot down and having these conversations right here, open table conversations, much like you would find at a fucking drag show. This is the truth. Like, at the drag show, though, I will say this, okay? One of the reasons that kids shouldn't be invited, and I agree with you, is the level, and you're right, of, like, I wouldn't say vulgarity, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you would say...
It is vulgar for children. It's not for adults.
It's not, no.
It's inappropriate.
But it's vulgar for kids, yes. I've talked to, been at a drag show. One of the lines that sticks out in my head, they were introducing each, and this drag queen goes, with the biggest tits in the game or something, and then has it away. Like, that's probably not something a kid wants to hear. But for you and I, we're like, yeah, I got you. You're not lying. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit of vulgarity for kids. So if there are people taking their kids to said drag shows, which, fine, they're going to do it. It's weird, strange. Those are the same kind of people taking their kids to beauty pageants. You see what I'm saying? I don't think that it's the kid. It's not the kid's fault first and fucking foremost. Let's say that it's not the drag show's fault either. It's the parenting choice. It's called accountability. Okay.
Yeah.
If you can't take accountability for the choices and be responsible for that kid up until you have that discussion of what a drag show is, or all of these facets and nuances, of the world and how these things exist and mold together, then you have no right taking that kid to a place they're not going to understand.
Yeah.
That's the conversation we should be having.
Even on Drag Race, sometimes the language that they use, or the male dancers are not even in drag, but they'll have backup dancers and they're not wearing very much. And, that's fine for an adult. And I haven't got a personal problem with it, but there's this level, this age range that is the core fan base for Drag Race, where it's like, I just hope that there are parents watching this with their children and answering questions, or, making sure that they're understanding what they're seeing. This is why I think we have such hateful bullying in the Drag Race fandom, is because there's children watching this stuff and having an opinion, and they're not being guided, and one of the guidances should be, well, don't be a bully. This is the whole point. We're dealing with a community that fights bullying, and yet it's perpetuating it. It's very frustrating.
It's like on the other side of the fence, the grooming thing, where they tell you that what you're doing is grooming, but they're trying to groom you. It's what is that, catch-22?
Who would want to groom themselves like this? Look at how gorgeous.
Right? I mean, damn. So that leads me to the next question. So we've talked about, the person you don't really want to see or shouldn't be at a drag show. What is your favorite person to see at a drag show? Like, what is your favorite perfect customer, or like, who do you look for at every show? Like, if you hear about a show virgin, if you're like, this is my first drag show ever, you're like, oh, fucking, I'm going to get that one, or whatever, right? So who do you look for? The first
thing I tell a show virgin is it's good luck to tip a drag queen.
Fair enough.
A lot of people don't understand the tipping thing, and it's really a North American thing. They don't tip in other countries either. But speaking of other countries, I do want to say the same thing with drag is happening in Australia. There's a couple of countries that it's happening. It's also happening in Canada. Like, it's not an American only thing. So this is much more prevalent than I think media is trying to make
worldwide.
It But I look, my favorite audience member is the same when I'm doing stand-up. It's like the people with a smile on their face who are facing you full on and paying attention. That's the best audience. They're there to be entertained and have a good time. Even there's a real problem with anybody who's drunk. It doesn't have to be at a drag show. Same as a comedy show. Drunk people are disruptive just because they no longer can sense what's right or wrong. And unfortunately, that's a big part of like bachelorette parties at a drag show, because these drag shows happen in a gay bar, and you get these cisgendered straight women coming from the suburbs who aren't ever in a gay bar, and now they think because they're in a bar with a lot of gay men that they could just be this way or that way, and like a drag queen, oh, I can touch her fake tits or look at her, grab her legs to see how real they are. Like, it's like, no, why would you like it if I did that to you? There's just a level of ignorance that is understandably natural for people who aren't exposed to certain things. But I think most people, when you're a guest in someone's house, you just act appropriately. And it's hard to do that when there's alcohol around. So, it can be a bit of a problem. But I think the best audience is one that's attentive and interested and reactive,
I dig that. No, and you're right. There is a level of composure that entertainers hold themselves at. There's a level of composure that we would expect our audience to hold themselves at. And that's, the same way relatable back, and I hate to make it about it, but food, you have that perfect guest. That perfect guest here make sure you tip your fucking server. Don't be a fucking prick. Enjoy the food. If you don't, let us know. Like, all right, cool, right? I've had many of people where, like, I've looked up through, the window of the kitchen, all right, and I've seen that gentleman, and he's just like, I'll get that head nod or that tip of the hat or that you get that satisfaction. I've stolen a few of those looks over the years myself, and didn't accredit certain people, and I feel bad about that. But it's good to see and good to feel off of. But the one thing I've got to commend, drag kings and queens on, it's a fucking show, right? It's an experience. You're an entertainer. So whether you're doing it for one person or you're doing it for 1,000, you're doing the same fucking show. And that commitment, that level. That's why we're having this conversation. It's that kind of passion behind everything, that kind of, projection into things. Now, over the years, developing Wilma Fingerdoo, sorry, was there a lot of, vices for you? How did you, because there's things that you deal with everyday life, let's be honest, and you film the show Knock Knock Ghost on Amazon, talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, Out of Drag, as Richard Ryder, right. I'm the host of that, yeah.
Right. So in doing that, doing both of these things, you're going to have where things blur over, let's be honest, where your life kind of chaos, as anyone would. How did you deal with that? Was it a couple glasses of wine? Did you smoke joints here and there? How did you deal with it?
No, I've never had a problem with it. Like, as I said, I knew I was gay as a child, and I wasn't raised with religion. I had a single parent who worked full time, so my grandparents raised me, really, and my grandmother, and she adored me. I could have lit kittens on fire and she wouldn't have cared. But I just never
fucking love that. I'm sorry. Hang on, you can't give me gold like that and try and continue. Lit kittens on fire. I'm sorry. I apologize. That is the best. Oh my God, you nailed it there too. Sorry.
The Knock Knock Ghost that's great is that I'm openly gay on that too. Like, a lot of the jokes I make are gay slanting, and then my co-host Bree came out as trans between season 1 and season 2. Okay. And what was funny about that was that Bree all but was cross-dressing in her day-to-day in season 1. Like, her boots always had a little heel on it. She carried a bag that was bigger than the average purse, but clearly a purse,
Okay,
so for her to transition wasn't surprising really to anybody, but what was surprising was her nerves. She thought she might lose her job if she came out as trans, and it's like, oh please, that's the last thing. I think the production was more worried about her wanting to quit, say, than transitioning. But
I like hearing that.
Yeah, we're also, I mean, as I said, I met the production company through a gay television channel that I worked for. And so, I mean, it wasn't even my idea, the show. It was theirs. They said, we have an idea for a show. We'd really love you to host it. And the other thing was, it's such a small show. Like, we don't have writers. I wrote everything that I said. A lot of times, I would get the information the day before, and then I ad-libbed everything. There wasn't even any script. It was just of the moment. And when I interviewed people, like, there was always, ask them about this, ask them about that, because there were specific things they wanted on camera. But 90% of that show was organic to what was going on. And then we had, like, scenes that we did that were comedy segments that related to the story that usually were in the extra or the intro segments of the show. But the thing I was more concerned about was making sure we didn't falsify anything on the show, because our psychic, we had two. We had one for 2 seasons and another one for our 3rd season. And they're both professional psychics. Like, this is what they do. And I said, I don't want to do anything that could jeopardize their reputation, because the first thing we ever shot for Knock Knock Ghost was a teaser reel to sell the show. And we ended up shooting enough footage that we actually were able to make, that first episode was our teaser reel.
Right.
And one of the things that happened during that was somebody, if you're in the room, please knock. And our producer knocked on the wall, and I looked at him and said, "What are you doing?"
Right.
He said, "Well, we need the footage." It's like, but what if we never get that footage? You're selling it in a teaser reel to sell the show without the guarantee we'll ever get that. So what you're doing is you're setting a precedence that we will always lie. And and I'm just the host. I could have lost my job right then and there. Well, we'll hire somebody who will dance for us. And I was like, I don't know. I thought you wanted to have a reputable show. No, if you want to just have
authenticity a little bit, right?
Yeah, if you just want some lie on television, then hire someone else. Yeah. So, that was the only problem I had with the show, was that we were representing authenticity. And part of that authenticity happens to be that I'm gay, and I'm not hiding that, because I've never hidden it. I went through bullying through school because I didn't hide it. And I wasn't flamboyant. I wasn't cross-dressing. I wasn't wearing eyeshadow or nail polish in the 70s. Even though there were people who did. But I was just different enough that it stood out. And I think because of that, I never felt the need to not fit in, because I realized at an early age that I could have a happy and full life without these people in it, And it really set a precedence for me where, well, if you don't like me, then I'm okay with you not being my friend. Like, I don't need that. There can't be a caveat with a friendship.
No, I agree. Like, and someone told me some, advice years ago that helped me with similar situations. I wouldn't really even call it like me just feeling like I was out of place, but I did disassociate myself because I was an alcoholic, right? And so it's like, I only wanted to hurt myself. I didn't really know. But here's the thing. If a person doesn't like you, understand, bud, understand that they are such a small part of your world, and you're such a small part of theirs until you create that world with this individual, And that being said, you can fall out of love with people. You can fall out of respect for people. These things are meant to change. We're not meant to stay with everyone forever unless you want to.
Yeah.
Notice that, that's why some people here in America, at least I can speak for, conventional marriage doesn't really apply or work anymore, because it's not conventional to the time or conducive to anyone's good health or anything. You're going to notice that prenups are going down and prenups are going up and promises are going down. That's the level of the levity of the situation now. And so, going back to your point earlier, circling back, if I will, I think that you're absolutely right, in how we, present these things and how we accept them, okay? One of the biggest issues being, like, when Tu Wong Fu, okay, you used Tu Wong Fu earlier. You're like, listen, I like how they did it, don't get me wrong, but I don't like, certain things about it. We got to have these conversations, because the people that are promoting these things or are putting it out there, they don't have all the facts. They don't fucking know anything. That is the truth of it. For example, if a cop pulls you over, they don't know shit until you tell them.
Yeah.
So why would you sit there and fucking shoot yourself in the foot? They don't have a happy day planned for you when you made them do something, God forbid, right? So, now they're gonna, use that shit over your head. But I think that these conversations, are very needed, and I do appreciate you sitting, down with me and taking some time. And I definitely want to talk about your YouTube. I love it, man. I really do. It's so fucking cool. Like, I love being able to, watch a person do what they enjoy, do what they do. Real talk. Like, if I meet a baker and that motherfucker gives me a piece of bread, and I can taste whether or not that person's lying, okay?
Yeah.
When I see someone doing something that they're passionate about, that just makes me feel fucking good about what I'm passionate about, And
Thanks.
it's the truth. And it's like, like we talked about earlier, we could talk forever about food. We really could. But the truth of it is this. It's just passion. That's really it. Like, I feel that, oh my God, like, okay, food, yay. Is that really what we're going to talk about? Oh, yay. But you're like, oh no, fuck off. Eggs Benedicts are great. What are you talking about? Like, I love those. It's a perspective thing. So if I were to sit back and talk about makeups and things of that nature, as we did, I kind of feel bad, but it's like I am generally curious about this. Like, and I've proven.
Oh, I love talking about makeup.
I feel that it's like, there are nuances in what we know and are passionate about. Okay, so professional knives to a chef. One would think that you have to have the sharpest, best, and this and that. None of that actually matters. If you don't know how to fucking use it, then what's the point of having the most expensive?
Yeah, they're called knife skills for a reason.
Exactly. And I've seen some of y'all so-called chefs out in this motherfucker that I wouldn't trust with a fucking large dice, let alone a small one. So, let's just point that out. And I've seen people fucking jab knives and nick themselves, and they're like, oh, I've been a chef all years. Then I need you to understand that when Anthony Bourdain said, if you cut yourself, you're an idiot. I need you to understand that. Means you didn't realize that knife was that sharp. Okay, we need to talk about that before we even move on to anything else. I'm sure you can say the same thing about certain people in the drag community and scene today, and certain things that they're doing, as you said earlier. So I dig that. On that, I appreciate it. But again, they're not, and they should not be treated as such. They are delicious. But Miss Wilma Fingerdoo, I love that. I was like, listen, that is fantastic. Is that just pinned? Yeah, it's just pinned in there.
Yeah, it's a hair clip pin hat thing. E Dupree Designs on Instagram made this for me. It's
so for anyone wanting one, definitely go get it.
Yeah, it's a bunch of black flowers. I don't even know where the pin is, but the thing I liked about it was because it's all. I can't even get it off. I pinned it too good. But it's you can see it's flowers and feathers.
Okay. Oh, black flowers.
Black. Yeah. I love that. I thought that was really. So I wore black nails to go with.
It speaks my soul. Like everything I own is pretty much black. If you ask my old lady, hey, what color is this T-shirt? Black. It's just safe to us because it's what I wore, man. It's what I wore under my chef coats. It's just. I've had white chef coats where the restaurant, it had to be white. And if you had white on white, you can see it's not going to look, and it stains yellow because of sweat and stuff. Black just, it made more sense for me. And I listen to metal music too. So I'm part of like all of these, little, again, nuances. But speaking of nuances, again, Miss Wilma Fingerdoo review on YouTube. Go check it out. On Instagram at the Wilma Fingerdoo. Make sure you add her, follow everything she's doing, like, share, subscribe her fucking YouTube, turn on the bell for notifications, because if you don't, you're an asshole. Yeah. Now that I'm saying that, I should probably think back and do that. So I will be the asshole here.
Oh, Rodney, what the hell's wrong with you?
It is what it is. But no, again, my tokers and my chokers, my smokers. Again, I want to thank Miss Wilma Fingerdoo for coming on and, sharing some light on some topics that people don't normally want to talk about and having these conversations. Again, I thank you really, really, really. It was an amazing conversation.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. I had a blast. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. And again, make sure, check out her YouTube, check out everything she's done. Make sure you check out the Knock Knock Ghost. It's still on Amazon, correct?
I have no idea. You know what? I've never watched it. I've never.
Last I knew, it was on Amazon Prime. If it's not on Amazon Prime, I'm sorry, but last I knew,
it's on Outdoor Living. Oh God.
You know what? Google Knock Knock Ghost, and it'll tell you what it's on.
It's playing somewhere.
Yeah, I hate to be that person, but while we're plugging it, but absolutely check it out. Because I love it. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I really do. It was an amazing conversation. It has shed a light on a lot of things that I'm now going to, speak about differently and think about differently. I appreciate the perspective, and, I know a lot of my viewers would too. So again, I do really want to thank you. But all my tokers, my jokers, my smokers.
The way I order steak, so we're even.
Please do. Please do. You most definitely should. You most definitely should. Take it the way that it's meant to be, you know what I'm saying? And that's the truth. And you'll know that. Never do it past medium. Take it. But no, my tokers, my jokers, my smokers. We'll catch you guys on the flip.